Right now, the United States has about 1,000 soldiers at the border with Mexico. President Trump just asked for 2,500 more, and there could be up to 10,000 troops along the border with Mexico. In today's English lesson, we will look at a news clip that talks about how President Trump wants to get rid of, deport, illegal immigrants. And in that news clip, we will talk about all of the difficult vocabulary, the English idioms, and of course, those pesky English phrasal verbs they use. We'll talk about what a border is, the English phrasal verb cracking down. Of course, we need to talk a lot about immigration, detainees, another English phrasal verb, end up on. We'll talk about what a contingent is, migrants, deportation, gross miscarriage. We'll talk about what it means to seek asylum. We'll talk a little bit about the government, like the Justice Department and the State Department. We will also talk about our new Secretary of State. His name is Marco Rubio. This English lesson will be great for anyone who wants to have better conversations in English, anyone who is studying for the IELTS or TOEFL exam. Before we get to the news clip, please don't forget to hit that like button. That way, other English learners will be able to find the English lesson. If this is your first time here, go ahead and subscribe so you never miss another English lesson.
Turning now to politics, President Trump is giving new details about cracking down on illegal immigration and using the military to help do it. He's told the Pentagon to send more troops to the southwest border, and some future detainees are likely to end up on military bases.
The first thing we should talk about is what is a border in English. For each of these terms, I will have a picture, I will have the official definition, and I will use that in a sentence. A border is a line that separates two countries. In the United States, we have two big borders, the one with Mexico and the one with Canada. Here is a sentence. The United States shares a border with Mexico and Canada. I have never been to the Mexican border. I will be visiting Mexico in a couple months, but I will be flying into Mexico. I have been to the Canadian border and I have made an English lesson there. I will put a link to that English lesson at the end of this one. Next, we have the English phrasal verb cracking down. Let's talk about what that means. Taking strong action to stop unwanted activities. Let's take a look at the picture before we get to the sentence. This mother might be cracking down on some of the behavior her son is doing. Maybe he is being mean to his sister, so his mom says, "Enough of that. You are going to get in trouble if you do it again." She is cracking down on that behavior. Let's look at this sentence. The government is cracking down on illegal immigration. And don't worry, we are talking about immigration next.
Turning now to politics, President Trump is giving new details about cracking down on illegal immigration and using the military to help do it. He's told the Pentagon to send more troops to the southwest border, and some future detainees are likely to end up on military bases. Nancy Cordes is at the White House for us. She's following all this. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning, Tony. Lots of new immigration policies coming online every day. There's a new executive order that calls for 1,500 troops to be sent to the border to supplement the 2,500 who are already there.
Immigration is the process of moving to a new country to live there permanently. In other words, to live there forever, not temporarily. That means just for a short period of time. Many people choose immigration to seek better opportunities, maybe a better job, maybe safety. They mentioned the Pentagon in the news clip. Let's talk about what the Pentagon is. The headquarters of the United States Department of Defense. The Pentagon announced the deployment of troops to the border. If you have seen some of my other English lessons, I have talked about deployment or deploying. That means like sending people out somewhere. They are sending out troops to the border. Detainees. These are not prisoners, but the definition might sound like it. People who are held in custody, especially for legal reasons. They're not arrested yet, they're just in custody. We have also talked about in custody in past English lessons. The detainees were waiting for their immigration hearings.
He's told the Pentagon to send more troops to the southwest border, and some future detainees are likely to end up on military bases.
What about this English phrasal verb with two prepositions, end up on? That means to finally be in a particular place or situation. After a long journey, they ended up on the streets of a new city. This can be a tricky one, so I have a couple bonus sentences for you. The sentence and this picture go together. He argued with his coach, so he ended up on the bench at the beginning of the game. Take a look at this sentence. At first, she didn't want her to go, but she ended up taking the trip with her friends. At first, she said she didn't want to go on the trip because of somebody, but in the end, she ended up going.
Nancy, good morning.
Good morning, Tony. Lots of new immigration policies coming online every day. There's a new executive order that calls for 1,500 troops to be sent to the border to supplement the 2,500 who are already there. And now sources tell CBS News the new administration is thinking about dispatching a much larger military contingent.
I did almost an entire English lesson about executive orders. Just in case you didn't see that lesson, let's talk about it. It might be review. An executive order is an official directive from the president that has the power of law. It's like an official statement from the president to change something. The president signed an executive order to increase border security. Supplement is the next one. It means to add something to improve or complete it. The teacher provided extra material to supplement the lesson. It's like something that helps something else. Take a look at that picture. In that person's hand might be vitamins, and they might use those vitamins to supplement their diet. We might actually call those things supplements.
And now sources tell CBS News the new administration is thinking about dispatching a much larger military contingent to help seal the border. Trump officials are considering deploying 10,000 soldiers to the border and using U.S. bases to hold migrants awaiting deportation, according to an internal memo obtained by CBS News.
This was a gross miscarriage of common sense.
Next, we have dispatching. It is a verb and it means sending someone or something to a specific place for a purpose. And in that picture, we might call that person a dispatcher. A dispatcher receives phone calls from people who need police officers or firefighters or an ambulance, and they will dispatch those vehicles where they are needed. That person is a dispatcher. Here is a sentence to supplement that definition. The company is dispatching extra workers to fix the problem. Next, we have a contingent. A contingent. Here, this would be a noun. Contingent is a group of people united by a common feature, forming part of a larger group. A contingent of soldiers was sent to assist in the operation. So we might say that a contingent of 2,500 soldiers are being dispatched to the border to supplement the 1,000 troops that are already there.
There's a new executive order that calls for 1,500 troops to be sent to the border to supplement the 2,500 who are already there. And now sources tell CBS News the new administration is thinking about dispatching a much larger military contingent to help seal the border. Trump officials are considering deploying 10,000 soldiers to the border and using U.S. bases to hold migrants awaiting deportation, according to an internal memo obtained by CBS News.
This was a gross miscarriage of common sense.
The news clip mentions migrants. Let's talk about what migrants are. They are people who move from one place to another, especially to find work or better living conditions. In the United States, we have migrant workers. They might pick vegetables or fruits and they move to wherever those fruits or vegetables are ripe and need to be picked. Migrants often face challenges when settling in a new country. Deportation. This is such a sad word. It's the act of sending someone back to their native country, usually for legal reasons. There might be some illegal immigrants in the United States. They commit crimes here and then they are deported. That is the verb. The government ordered the deportation of individuals without proper visas. They talk about internal memos in the news clip. Let's talk about what those are. A message sent within an organization to share information. Internal means it usually stays inside the company, inside the government. Maybe it is not supposed to get out to the public. The manager sent an internal memo about the new policy changes. A gross miscarriage. I think it is President Trump who says this. And it means a serious and unfair mistake or failure. Yeah, that person looks like they might have just conducted a gross miscarriage of something. The wrongful conviction was a gross miscarriage of justice. That is so sad. When someone is convicted of a crime they didn't do and they have to spend a lot of time in jail for something they just didn't do. It happens quite a bit and it's so sad. Asylum. Some people seek asylum. Let's talk about what it is. Protection granted by a country to someone who has fled their home country as a political refugee. The family sought asylum to escape persecution in their homeland. Believe it or not, there are some governments who don't like it when people oppose them and they may try to put them in jail. If that happens, that person may try to go to a different country and seek asylum.
This was a gross miscarriage of common sense to allow people to come in.
U.S. border agents were also directed this week to immediately fingerprint and deport migrants crossing into the country illegally without giving them the opportunity to request asylum, a return to the COVID-era policy known as Title 42.
Title 42. To be honest, I had to look this one up. I didn't know what it was, but it is a U.S. health law used to prevent the spread of diseases recently applied to control immigration. So this happened during 2020 when there was a virus going all around the world. Title 42 was used to keep immigrants out of the United States to try to prevent the spread of disease. Under Title 42, migrants were quickly expelled or kicked out to prevent COVID-19 spread.
U.S. border agents were also directed this week to immediately fingerprint and deport migrants crossing into the country illegally without giving them the opportunity to request asylum, a return to the COVID-era policy known as Title 42. New White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
This is something President Trump campaigned on. The American people have been waiting for such a time as this.
Press secretary is mentioned. Who is that? It is a person who communicates official information to the media or to reporters on behalf of an organization or government. The president has a press secretary. This person talks to reporters because the president is usually too busy to talk to reporters. Although President Trump, in his first few days in office, has talked to reporters quite a bit. I don't think we've seen his new press secretary yet. The press secretary addressed questions during the news conference.
New White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
This is something President Trump campaigned on. The American people have been waiting for such a time as this.
Another memo obtained by CBS News, this one from leaders at the Justice Department, directs employees nationwide to investigate any instances of state and local officials impeding the Trump administration's new immigration enforcement policies.
The Justice Department, what is that? The U.S. Federal Department, that means it is in Washington, D.C., responsible for making sure laws are followed. The Justice Department announced new measures against corruption. That is just an example sentence. But the Justice Department has some other names. You might hear the Justice Department called the DOJ, meaning like the Department of Justice. And the Attorney General is the leader of the DOJ. Pam Bondi, there is a picture of her. Pam Bondi is Trump's nominee. The president picks who he wants, and then the Senate has to confirm them. It's basically like they have to say, yes, this person is okay. Impeding. What does that mean? Delaying or preventing something by obstructing it. In other words, you try to slow something down so it can't happen. Heavy traffic was impeding the progress of emergency vehicles. So if there is a fire and a fire truck has to get to it, if there is a lot of traffic, that could impede the movement of the fire truck. They might not be able to go so fast.
Another memo obtained by CBS News, this one from leaders at the Justice Department, directs employees nationwide to investigate any instances of state and local officials impeding the Trump administration's new immigration enforcement policies. Pastor Emma Lozano runs a Methodist church in Chicago that used to provide sanctuary for migrants facing deportation.
Sanctuary. It is almost like asylum, a place of refuge or safety. Refuge and safety are basically the same thing. In immigration, cities or states that limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. We have sanctuary cities in this country. Los Angeles is one, Chicago is one. If the police are trying to go in and get immigrants out of the country, it might be harder to do if it's in a sanctuary city. The city declared itself a sanctuary for undocumented immigrants. Undocumented means they don't have any papers. It's like a nice way to say they are illegal. When talking about immigration, you might hear of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. a U.S. agency responsible for enforcing immigration laws. Like, this is the group of police that try to remove illegal immigrants from the country. ICE conducted operations to locate and detain unauthorized immigrants.
Pastor Emma Lozano runs a Methodist church in Chicago that used to provide sanctuary for migrants facing deportation. But now she's worried that it could make her church a target for ICE.
We're telling our families from my church and that if you are deported, you should already have paperwork set so we know where your children need to go. You need to have those legal documents, those powers of attorneys ready.
Next, we have power of attorney, a legal document allowing one person to act on another's behalf. For example, my wife has the power of attorney over me. If I have an accident and I can't speak for myself, she can do it for me. She granted her son power of attorney to manage her affairs. If somebody gets older and their brain isn't working so well, before their brain started not working as well, hopefully they signed off power of attorney to someone they trusted so that person can speak for them when it comes to legal things.
We're telling our families from my church and that if you are deported, you should already have paperwork set so we know where your children need to go. You need to have those legal documents, those powers of attorneys ready.
In an Oval Office sit-down last night, President Trump repeated false claims that other countries are sending their prisoners here.
A sit down is a meeting or discussion between people. The manager requested a sit down with the team to discuss the project. False claims. False claims. This is just another way to say lies. He claims to have seen a UFO last night, but many people think that is false.
In an Oval Office sit-down last night, President Trump repeated false claims that other countries are sending their prisoners here. They've emptied their jails. I would, if I were the president or prime minister or something of another country, I'd empty my jails right into America.
And in another big move by the Trump administration, the State Department has now canceled all refugee travel to the United States and halted refugee processing.
Another piece of the federal government is the State Department, the U.S. federal department that manages friendships between countries. I wanted to keep it positive. Not all relationships between countries are so friendly, but the State Department deals with that too. The State Department issued a travel advisory for the region. This guy, Marco Rubio, is the new Secretary of State. That is the leader of the State Department. The leader of the State Department is called the Secretary of State. Trump picked Marco Rubio to be his Secretary of State. He just was confirmed by the Senate. He won like 99-0. He was a senator. He didn't vote for himself. We have 100 senators. So basically, everyone in the Senate voted for this guy, which means he is really popular. And let's talk about refugees. Refugees are people who flee or leave their country due to war, persecution, or natural disaster. The refugees were seeking safety and a new life in a different country. Anytime you hear that word refugee, that means their home country was in a bad way for some reason. Lot of talk about immigration in this one, a lot of legal terms, but congratulations on making it to the end. If you are looking for more English, I will leave like right over there that English lesson I did at the Canadian border. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.